What's up, everybody? Andrew here, back with. Sorry, I want to redo that. I was about to do my YouTube intro. I almost said that
What's
one.
up,
Andrew here.
everyone? It's your boy.
Hello, everybody. Andrew here. Welcome back to Doomed to Repeat, a history podcast. Joining me today are my co-hosts Matthew Arana and Levi Habiger. Matthew, happy birthday! You're the big 2-2 now, I hear, right?
Yes, I was jamming out to T Swift all of yesterday, I promise.
Yeah, it's pretty despicable. We share the same last name, so you don't have to disclose that information. Levi, it was not your birthday, but you probably had a good week, I assume?
Stress.
Stress? Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's right. I forgot. You're still in school and stuff like that. Um, I think everyone in America is stressed. I think everyone in the world is stressed about anything and everything
Everybody's
right
very
now.
stressed right now.
But we're all trying to live our normal stress filled lives, which is just like doubling the stress. So yeah, we're all really dealing with that right now. Anyways, this isn't about stress or life or anything like that. This is about history, because this is a history podcast coming to you every Sunday. That's right, we now officially post every single Sunday on YouTube and podcast services around the globe. That includes Spotify, iTunes, Google, things like that. There might be some others in the future, but those are your main ones where most people get their podcast services. Every week, three friends come together and we talk about random points in history. For this week, we are going to talk about medieval Germany. That is what we decided at the end of last episode. And let me tell you, I don't know about you boys, but we might have gone a little too big.
I think I don't think we necessarily overextended ourselves, but it's definitely hard to just pin down Germany.
Yeah, we should have been. I think this is a good learning lesson, because
Yeah.
with the first two civilizations or time periods or whatever you want to call it, the first two were very um, light on information. They were very barbaric. They were ancient times, so we didn't have to really deal with a lot of politics and things like that. But with medieval Germany, it's not just Germany. There's so much going on at this time that affects Germany, and then Germany affecting everything else. And there's just so much happening that we could talk about the first 100 years for 2 hours just to talk about how it got up to there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what we're gonna do
Yes.
is, for this episode, we're gonna talk about medieval Germany, and we're gonna do the best that we can to hit all the highlights, the key points, the big things that happened, how the country developed, and things like that. I know Matthew's gonna talk a lot about the architecture. I'm probably gonna make a Nazi reference here and there because I don't. Yep,
Low
that's
bar.
probably what's gonna happen. I mean, what am I gonna talk about, the piked heads? I might talk about them too. Um, but either way, we're gonna try to hit the high notes. But if you're looking for like a detailed every single year thing about Germany in the medieval times, we're going to do our best. That being said, I think from now on, and let me know what you boys think about this. I think when it comes to these civilizations that aren't ancient, like I know we talked about ancient India last time or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that episode could easily be one episode. But I'm thinking when we start getting into these so much more is happening right in these time periods, and there's so many moving pieces to these time periods. I think it would be in our best interest to split these up into not only time periods inside of the period, but maybe like do a 2-part or 3-part episode on these periods. What do you guys think?
I think that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd be fine with that.
Matt, you think so? I just
Yeah.
think to really delve in, and like I said, maybe we get through with this episode, and then in a month or two, we're like, there were some things about medieval Germany that I kind of want to touch up on. We could do a part 2 then.
Mm-hmm.
But to keep the ball rolling and to keep everything consistent now, since we already did the research over mostly more or less the entire time period, we'll do one episode now. But if we do, say, the Roman Empire, which we already knew from the beginning that was going to be a multi-part episode,
Oh, yes.
but if we do something like that, or colonial America, or the British Empire, or things like that, I think it'd be best to do 2 to 3 episodes. So,
Okay.
all right. I just wanted to get that out of the way. Now that we're a few minutes into the podcast, like I said, it's Matthew's birthday, so very happy birthday to him. I honestly had to sit there and think, how old is he? It's hard to remember these days. I don't know about you guys also, but as I get older, which is just funny because compared to the majority of people on Earth, we're not that old. But I've
Mm-hmm.
already hit that point where I've started to forget how old I am, and
Mm.
I've definitely stopped caring how old I am as well. So, I mean, like, do you guys feel the same way or?
I want to say I necessarily feel that way just yet, but I would say that there's some points where it's just like, yeah, I'm 21, I'm about to be 22. Okay, so what?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is a so what, especially during birthdays. I'm like, whatever. But it's just weird, like going to place and be like, okay, how old are you? And it's like, wait, how old am I? Because when you're younger and a teenager, I feel like it's always on I'm 17, I'm 16, I'm
Mm.
10. I'm 10 and a half. You know that date and you know that age so well, but then when you get older, you're just like, I don't know, early 20s, somewhere around there. You don't really care anymore. But maybe that's just me.
I mean,
All right.
I still can't rent a car, so I still kind of care.
Oh yeah. Why would you want to rent a car in this
Why?
economy? What?
Why would I want to rent a car? Because I am too poor to actually afford a decent car, and I would just like to pretend sometimes.
Hey man, we can all dream, can't we?
Hey, by the time we reach that age, they'll extend it farther.
Oh god.
Probably.
You have to be. You'll have to be like all the 80-year-olds in Congress will be like, you got to be 30 now. You're not responsible enough, as they get inside their limousines and have a driver or whatever. Anyways, that's not about that. We're going to talk about Germany. But before we talk about Germany, I have a question for you guys. Now, the last 2 episodes, we have done scenarios where I said you could either do this or do this. I actually don't remember last week. Oh, it was about would you rather be in D-Day or in
Oh
the Russian army or whatever. I have a little different one that's a much more opened and requires a little more thinking. You guys at home can play along to this too. Now, Matthew,
Yes.
Levi,
yes.
my question for you is out of all the people that have been assassinated being in a political or higher power, you got murdered. Of all the people that were assassinated, who would you save?
Ooh.
Hmm.
If you could save
Hmm.
one person that has been assassinated
Hmm.
throughout time, who would you save?
Hmm. Hmm. It's very interesting. Hmm.
I think I have my answer. It's not going to be what you think it is because I really love Roman history and stuff like that. It's not going to be them because Julius Caesar had to die for the empire to happen, and I understand that. And Alexander the Great had to die, and there's everybody still says like, oh, he was assassinated and stuff like that, or he was just sick, but like, it's up in the air on what happened to Alexander the Great. But he had to die to put in motion for the Roman Empire to happen. So the person I would say is from more recent history, and Levi and I are actually in a group chat that we changed the name to it because I don't know, we talked about him a lot, and I would save John F. Kennedy.
JFK.
Yeah, like
I feel like that's such a basic answer. Both JFK and Lincoln, of course, are
no.
like no, 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 no. Okay, okay, go.
I would like Lincoln is a different one. Like I also believed he kind of had to die for like everything he did to be cemented into like actual law and be abided by. But with Kennedy, he was actively pushing for the reforms and like going to get them passed anyways, but then either the CIA or some dickhead fucking shot him. And like, literally, Andrew, have you ever talked to Gigi Paul about it? Our, that's our great grandfather. Because he has told me the story of him the day that Kennedy was shot when he was in Dallas, when our great grandfather was in Dallas, living down there. And like, literally, all of America was basically just like hollowed out on the inside. Like, he was the people's president and he got killed. And yeah, he did the Bay of Pigs, which was a disaster, but
I was about
also
to say
he stopped the Cuban Missile Crisis, which
that he
is
kind of
like
caused. Now, here's my thing with the whole. Here's my thing about Kennedy. I personally, and feel free to jump in at any time, Levi. Here's Andrew's hot take of the day. And I'm not. I these are seriously. I want to also point this out. We're only in episode 3, but unless I explicitly say I'm joking, all these takes are stuff that I do honestly believe. So my hot take is I think Kennedy is one of the worst presidents we've ever had. And I honestly believe that people only like him for 2 reasons. First, he was a good face on TV. Broadcasting presidents and stuff was fairly new when he became president, especially I think like when he was debating and stuff like that. Those were some of the first presidential debates ever. So that helped a lot. He was very charismatic on TV and he talked well. Second, and this applies for people now, is that he got assassinated. He was likable and he got assassinated. I feel like the same thing if, say, in this weird time or in some twisted reality, uh, Obama was assassinated 2.5, 3 years into his presidency. I think people would regard him as one of the greats. He was one of the greatest presidents we ever had. When we know now, and I think this is a fairly common judgment, is that the Obama presidency wasn't that great looking back at it now. So I think the same thing would have happened with Kennedy. The way the Cold War was going, and this is another like take that I view on the Cold War. I feel like both sides were bad in the Cold War. I believe that America and
yeah.
Russia were both bad, and I or Soviet Union at that point. And I understand why people would look at the United States as the good guys because you got communism and you had failed states and all those things about the Soviet Union that made Soviets not great. And of course, we look now at China and North Korea and things like that. It's like, obviously, if you would have it either the way, you would try to have it the way America is and not that way. But the whole Cuban Missile Crisis was started, and I'm sure you know this. I mean, do you know why they put missiles in Cuba?
Yes, I do know why they put missiles in Cuba, Andrew.
I mean, why? Do you want to say it? Like,
Yeah, you can say it. You're good.
well, they put missiles there because we put missiles over in Europe. I have no idea where it was, but it was somewhere relative to like 60 miles from Russia, kind of the same that Cuba is 60 miles from the US. That right there, the Cuban Missile Crisis was a retaliation. I would agree with you if Russia put the nukes there and we hadn't done anything and then JFK got us out. But we put the nukes there first. And trust me, that's something that the president authorized and went through. We put our nukes there,
Yeah.
and then they responded, and then they got themselves out of a crisis that they put themselves into.
I
Also, the
mean,
Cuban Missile Crisis was avoided because of a Russian general. Because wasn't that the one where he got like it was a fake okay, but he got an okay to launch nukes, and he was like, "No, I'm not doing it."
no,
So it
that
was
was a different
dumb.
thing. That was a submarine.
Oh,
That was
okay.
a nuclear
Well,
submarine.
gotcha. That makes more sense.
But
So that's about that.
I just
And
want
then
to
also, I
interject.
want to I want to point out really quick. Okay. Also, is the Bay of Pigs, which you brought up too, which almost led to nuclear war. It was because of Russia that we did not, because we attacked. We did that. We basically did a military operation there and lost. So I don't think he was a great president. I think I understand why people liked him, but that's my thing about JFK is that I think he was a pretty face that did was it was the heat of the Cold War.
I didn't get that. Could you
He,
try again?
what in the world was that? It was the heat of the Cold War. People loved America. They loved defending America. He was for America. That's my 2 cents on it.
Um, I could probably list like 20 worst presidents. Like, number one, Obama is 100% a worse president than John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy kept us out of Vietnam. The only reason we got into Vietnam was because of Johnson afterwards, who escalated it. Kennedy was
Yeah.
keeping us out of Vietnam as much as possible. The Bay of Pigs happened, and there's a whole like history that we can get in with the United States and Cuba that we can talk about. But like,
Oh yeah, of
the
course, of
United
course.
States has wanted to annex Cuba for like ever, but just decided not to because we use them as like a battle cry for attacking the Spanish and like prop up the Cubans, let them get their own freedom when really we want Cuba. We still want Cuba. It's just there's a lot of politics that go into it. He was looking at this as a way to get it was very poorly executed, but also at the same time, that's not his fault that it was so poorly executed. That was the CIA's fault that it was so poorly executed at the Bay of Pigs. He
Well, yeah,
he like okayed it, but the CIA was just like a bunch of fumbling funky monkeys and like, oh, what we're supposed to get air support for them? What? No, what? A battle? We didn't know we needed all that stuff for a battle. Dang. But yeah, Kennedy is a lot of people do like to say that he's overrated because he was assassinated. But the reason he was assassinated, I believe, is because he was keeping us out of Vietnam, and a lot of people wanted us to go into Vietnam.
I mean, also, and Levi, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
I mean, I'm sure Levi, our conspiracy theory expert over here, could tell you about the Kennedy curse because that's a good argument that it was for Vietnam, except most of his family's been assassinated. So there's a little more going on than what it seems to be believed about.
Nothing. Hey, man, nothing bad ever happens to the Kennedys. There's
I think it was
there's
this year that another Kennedy like drowned or something. Like this shit
yeah, it's
constantly
crazy, but
happens.
on his assassination, I wanted to say, there's multiple reasons why Kennedy could have been assassinated, and sadly, we may never know truly what had happened. Just
Yeah.
that I'll just give a quick rundown, real quick, and then I'll say who I would save.
Yeah, sorry for
Who I
taking
who
so
I'd
long
say
on
no,
this.
no, you guys are fine. I understand. This is good content, but in the 1960s, you would have believed that the communists killed JFK. In the 70s, maybe the 80s, you would have believed that the mob killed JFK. Throughout the 90s and then the thousands, even up to now, you believe that the CIA killed JFK. So it really depends on how it has been portrayed, and who is writing on it, and who decides what information goes into it. And by the way, there's not a whole lot of information that is allowed to go into it. Only from what we've seen and what has been witnessed by eyewitnesses and such.
Yeah,
So
I agree. I agree. All right, and do you want to give your who you
yeah, I do
would?
actually. Mine goes a little bit farther back than Mr. JFK,
Is it Robert
and
Kennedy?
no, it's not Robert Kennedy. That is an interesting assassination by itself. But
Yeah.
who one person who I would save purely to see how history would fully interact, at least into the modern world, as of right now, would be probably Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife.
Dude, you
Ah.
stole. That's who I would have chosen. Um, yeah, I mean, go ahead and say your reasoning because I
The
think
reason why
it's
I would try to save him, is because let's be real honest here. The assassination group that managed to kill him got lucky by chance.
yeah, because it turned. The
It,
parade turned,
yeah.
or it went off track. Like it
And there
was
was like
luck.
multiple. I think there was like multiple attempts on that day alone by the same group. It was just, I think, like a sniper's the sniper's rifle jammed, or he missed or something. Uh, One of them threw a grenade at the car, and it didn't blow up,
It's
and
like a
one of the
comedy kind
yeah, and one of the members who the member who killed him and his wife was just in a coffee shop, hearing the news that the assassination didn't go out as planned. We got to give up, and
yeah,
stuff like that. And then he just sees the car turning down the road, just grabs his gun and just runs out and just goes up to the car and does
little
the
bang bang.
deed.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it should be for anyone that knows World War One at all. It should be obvious why you would not want him to be assassinated. It was his assassination that kicked
that
off
ultimately
first.
caused it.
Yeah, because back then it was a lot of and who knows, honestly, World War One probably would have happened eventually because there were so
Eventually,
many alliances being made and so many borders already
so
being drawn.
many armies building up, so
Yeah.
many
That's what
It was already
I was gonna say is like
the
that's
arms
why I
race.
didn't choose Julius Caesar or Alexander the Great to say, because like it needs to happen so like the next step can be taken. But like with
maybe
World War
so.
One and Franz Ferdinand, which I thought about him too, it's just like at that time there was just so much turmoil and like intertwined, especially from the Habsburg
Well,
Empire.
I will. Well, turmoil. Yes, there was a whole lot of turmoil in Austria, Hungary, but it was also just we're at a point of history, and let's not get too far off track. Because I really want to talk about what we're mainly here to discuss tonight.
Eventually, yeah.
And but that is that for the at least for the first time in European history, we have all these nations jointly in communication with one another,
Yep.
and they are at everyone is at each other's throats right now. Everyone is just looking for an excuse to do something. Everyone wants to get land, um, get revenge for
I was
old
about to say,
wars,
mhm.
or fully establish themselves as the powerhouse in Europe.
Yep,
So
definitely. And like, I would pick him still because anything that could potentially avoid the Nazis, I'm all for because World War II happened because of World War One. I mean, let's be
exactly.
Well,
honest. The World
there's
War
a
took a break.
I'll digress. We will talk about that some other time, but like
I completely agree that World War One is what caused World War Two. I
Absolutely, it
completely
took a
agree.
break. It
I
took
think
a 40-year
the United
break, and
States is what caused World War II. The
ooh,
I
United
don't think
States
so.
stock market is what caused
agree.
World War II.
That
Com-
is uh,
That is
okay. Yeah,
okay.
that's
That is an
another time
interesting
because I don't agree with
thing.
that at
We can
all.
discuss it some other time, but I have my reasonings behind why I say that, and you will understand when we talk about it. It's some
That's
pretty
almost
meta shit, but like it
that's
makes
almost
sense.
that's almost out as outlandish as saying that Trump caused coronavirus, which you could
No, no, it is not. It
in
is
America.
nowhere in the ballpark of that shit.
Yeah, can we talk about what we're here to discuss tonight?
Yeah,
Yes, I
yeah.
would be very happy to. Can I do
Yeah.
like
Whoa,
the
whoa,
setting up?
whoa! Hey, I'm the host.
Fine,
Matthew,
okay.
do the setting up. Do the setting up.
Do the setting up? All right. So, um did we agree that we're starting at like the in the 800s at like the end of the dark ages?
Well, I will definitely talk about the Dark Ages because I think that's the most important part for Germany
Okay.
in the medieval
Then
period. But
I'll just do I'm going to give a brief history of like when Germany actually got its name of Germany, and it was named by the Romans. See, I
yes,
always find a way to get the Romans in here, but it was named by, I'm pretty sure, Julius Caesar, and the Romans named it. They had Germania Minor and Germania Inferior, and I think also Germania Magna. But after 9 AD and the loss of the legions and the ambush at the Turnberg Forest, the Romans gave up on Germania, and it was just wild frontier, uncontrolled by them. And we jump forward now because that's just when it got its name for the area that is now modern Germany. And we jump forward to after the Roman Empire fell. We're past the Dark Ages, and we start seeing a more semblance of what Germany actually is around like the late 700s, early 800s AD when Charlemagne comes around,
Mhm.
and but he's more known for creating like France. No, he didn't create France, but he's more known for being like French and create. He created West Francia and
Well,
East Francia.
well, he's very well known as becoming the first kind of real alive again emperor of the Romans, and I do that with like my fingers doing like the up and down
Yeah, the
thing,
air quotes.
the air quotes. I put that into air
Loosely
quotation.
Roman.
Loosely Romans. It was because the reason why he was crowned the new emperor of the Romans was basically because over in the east in Byzantium and Constantinople, the emperor's seat had laid vacant. The Mainly because the Pope had determined that the seat was vacant, mainly because it was a I think a woman. I can't remember her name. I think it was Irene.
Yeah, Irene of
Don't quote me on that.
Athens.
Irene of Athens, and it had remained vacant because it was a because it was a woman and her son. I don't think her son was old enough to even be considered an emperor yet.
Yeah,
So that
but
is
like,
why
yeah,
Charlemagne would be crowned.
yeah, and I'm thinking that we're probably going to talk about like the conflict between Eastern Orthodox and the Catholic Church a bit during this time period because there is a lot of it, and it all boils over. I think in like 10, 1053. Yeah, 1053 AD. But we'll get to that later. But right now, Germany, the first Holy Roman Emperor is Charlemagne, and he basically sets out the outlines of what will be medieval Germany. And anybody want to take
I
it away from there?
I will take it away from there because I somewhat disagree that Charlemagne sets up Germany to be medieval. Yes, he is definitely the medieval guy. He is definitely medieval.
Yes.
However, who really establishes the medieval period?
Okay.
Now, we can argue that the Dark Ages is a completely different period. I would argue that the Dark Ages is medieval. It's just dark. And who really establishes the at least the beginning of the medieval period will be Clovis the first. Now, who is Clovis? Well, let's go back to like kind of like the background of Germania and whatnot. So during the fall of the Western Roman Empire, a lot of the Germanic tribes that were mainly kept up in the north and such, as the Romans proceeded to come back down, coming out of Gaul, going back down to Rome and such. A lot of these Germanic tribes just flooded into Western Europe, and a lot of them, most notably, were the Franks, Saxons, the Marcomanni, the Alemanni. In fact, the French word for German is Alemanni, so that's where they get from the Alemanni tribe. The Burgundy tribe, which would become very prevalent in northern Italy. Um, so what happens here is that the Franks establish themselves to be kind of the biggest of the tribes, and they have a huge war with the Saxons that will actually last pretty much up until Charlemagne finally quells them, mainly for them being pagans. As we all know, Charlemagne hated pagans, or he hated people who did not have Christian beliefs. So who is Clovis? Why does he set medieval period standard? Well, it's because when Clovis comes down and the Franks come down, they are now fighting over what used to be Roman Gaul with the Saxons. They're basically trying to divvy up the land between them, and one side's going to come out on top of the other, and it is the Franks. Now, the Franks are led by Clovis, and in a battle, Clovis says, if I win this great battle against the Saxons, my enemies, then I will Christianize my whole kingdom. Basically, a prayer to the Christian God. And lo and behold, the Franks win that battle. The Saxons are pushed out. And they have to return to the lands to the north. I don't know if the Saxons, or at least the Anglo-Saxons, had already landed in Britain before that battle took place. I imagine that they did, but I'm not for sure. But so now that the Franks are now becoming Christian, how are they going to become Christian if they're pagan? Well, they got to use Romans to become Christian. So a lot of them become Christian by the Romans, and the reason why this is so important is because the Frankish kingdom just grows and becomes large and basically becomes all of what used to be Roman Gaul and such, and it
Mhm.
really establishes itself as its own kingdom. Not Roman, it's not an empire, it's a kingdom. And it is a. And take in mind that the Frankish tribe was not just one tribe, it was a growing collection of tribes from previous Germanic tribes. Same thing with the Saxons and the Burgundy, Marcomanni, and all the others. So, henceforth. So that is why Clovis the First is so important for. He sets the medieval standard, is what I'm trying to say here by doing this, and he sets the
Question.
standard for what other kingdoms will become after him and into the future of the medieval period.
I agree with that. I agree with that full heartedly. And yeah, because yeah, he basically starts the first kingdom, which like starts up the feudalism
Mm,
of it all, and that's the big key for like the medieval Europe is feudalism.
mm,
I have a question for the people at home, and I think this is why this podcast works so well because you guys, even just reading about this, there's a certain point that you guys understand about all this in history, and then there's people like me, and some of our listeners are probably like this too. That's like, what in the absolute fuck is a Saxon? I don't
A
know
Saxon?
a
what a,
Saxon, sorry,
a what
a
A
Saxon,
Saxon.
Saxon.
Saxon. What is that? I
Oh
don't
well,
know.
I'll tell. Hold on a second. Hold on a
Yeah,
second. Well,
I'll
hey,
let him take this.
I'll tell you what a Saxon is, Andrew. We are currently speaking their language technically.
Me? I won.
So Saxons were a group of Germanic tribes that were kind of toward in I think in the northeastern part of Germany. They were a
Mhm.
collection of a lot of smaller tribes that basically formed into the Saxons. The Anglo Saxons migrated to Britain. They landed in Britain. They'd fight with the British Romani or Romani,
And were those
and
just like native Britons that lived there?
well, the
That's the Welsh.
the technically yes. So the native Britons would be just the Britons, and the British Romani would be the mix of Romanized Britons.
Okay, okay, gotcha. So it has to.
So
A lot of this has to do with the Romans. Okay, understood.
just a little bit,
Yes.
yeah. So
Saxon. This does. That's probably where I know because that's always like a word I've heard before in either school or around is the those Saxon Anglers or Anglo Saxon or whatever they're called, and that makes sense. That's kind of where we came from. So that
so
makes sense.
so out of it all, eventually, just real quick, the Anglo Saxons would then later grow pretty big, but then they would a lot of them kind of you'll see a lot of them fighting against the Vikings in the Dark Ages as well in Saxon England. And then we have the famous conquest of William the Conqueror, who beats the Saxons. But
Hmm.
through it all, despite the Saxons not technically existing anymore, one thing that still lives and survives today is that English is a mainly a Saxon language that has been influenced over the years from French, Latin, and a lot of other European languages. But Sac, Saxony, or the idea of a Saxon, still lives on today because we still speak their language.
Oh yeah, so they won. No,
In a way, yeah.
Yeah,
I
kind
don't
of.
want to say I want to say that, but
even when we lose, we win. What can I say? We're just second. No, I'm kidding.
Just built
Anyway,
different.
so thank you. Yeah, I'm joking.
I
I'm
know, I know, I know.
obviously joking. Anyways, so thank you for pointing that out and explaining all that. Definitely going to cut out the part where I said that. Anyways, thank you for explaining all that. I appreciate it. Now I kind of get. I have a little more background on what's happening because when I was reading about all this, um, it really is like you gotta click a link to click a link to click a link to click a
Hmm.
link, because by this time, and it's more of what I was saying earlier, is that there's so much happening. There's so many groups of people now that the history books start talking about, well, this group started fighting with this group, and then this group came along, and then this king with this group. And if you're like me, who you're like, I don't know who any of these people are, you're like,
Hmm.
it doesn't really help if you learn that the Franks took out the Saxons and then were influenced by King blah 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 from the Roman Empire. So like, I don't know what these are. And that's what made Mesopotamia so easy, because there's like, it's just a bunch of people.
Well,
And they
yeah.
came from Africa, and there's a bunch of, that's it. No real nations or anything. It was a lot easier.
While we are on the subject of Germany and such, I would also like to mention that there was also another big player, the Lombards, whose name basically translates to Longbeards.
Love it.
Hell
I
yeah.
like it. I like it.
I guess a lot of them had long beards.
Yeah, I mean, when in Rome, do what the Romans do. When Longbeard, call yourself a Longbeard. All right, so we're at the point now where the civilization of Germany starts to exist. Correct? Like,
Kind of. Let's
Yeah.
let's 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 pump the brakes here real quick and let's clarify something here. Is that Germany will not be formally a nation until the 19th century.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. We
I'm
should
Yeah.
declare.
earlier when I was talking about Germany, I meant the identity.
The German identity,
Yeah,
yes.
the
Yeah.
like when it first got its name and like the territory of like the kind of like rough picture of it was from
Mm,
the Romans. They
yes.
were like, this is Germania.
And I would also like to touch on that real quick. Is that when you look at Germania, especially in Roman times, times and such, it was such a rough kind of like separation between the Celts and the Germans, because a lot of the German tribes almost had nothing in common with the other German tribe. The only thing that really kind of like set them apart from the Celts was that was kind of like their religion. A lot of them had a very more earthy. You could also, I think it's like an Aesir view in Norse mythology, which would later go all the way into Scandinavia, and that's where the Vikings would get their more Norse mythology.
Hmm.
Sorry, their more Norse mythology. I guess we could say.
Yeah.
But yes, so and we will see this up until the 19th century, especially in the German states. A lot of them are very different from each other. A lot of them kind of speak a different language from one another. That's basically
Yeah,
Mhm.
because isn't like Bavaria a German state?
yes,
Yeah.
Uh,
And
yes.
it's very distinct
Yeah,
from like,
Bavaria, Prussia,
yeah,
Saxon.
yeah. They have very distinct like subcultures of German, but
Hmm,
the thing that links them all together
was a
is,
religion.
yeah, was their religion.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I do want to go a little more into what happens to the territory of Germany later, especially like when there's a king or someone that dies and then splits Germania up into three sections, and that kind of
Hmm.
creates some borders and boundaries. It splits it between like three brothers and stuff. I'm sure you guys know about that.
Yes, that I think that I believe that was Clovis and his sons.
Yeah, I believe that was the name that I read. I don't have
Mhm.
my notes in front of me because I'm an idiot. But I think I do want to talk about that because that kind of starts shaping out boundaries of countries and things like that.
Hmm.
But before we get to that, what I do want to talk about, since this time period is so much more documented than the Yayoi and Kofun periods and the ancient Mesopotamia periods, where really people picked up some rocks and are like, oh, we think life was like this because it was written on a pot. It's not really like that for this. We know what happened with these things. We have much more things that survive throughout the years in this, and then also written language was also a thing by now. So,
I Go ahead, go ahead.
well, what I want to say, maybe it wasn't. I thought it was. I don't know. But I want to kind of get into the culture and how people lived in the Middle Ages or medieval ages, my bad. In the medieval ages, especially in this period. So kind of like, are we
So
talking? that they're hunters and gatherers? Are we talking that they actually have cities where there are carts and wagons and stuff? What kind of like things did they do? Were plays happening already and things like that? Things like that. I know, Matthew, you had the architecture, so like what buildings were they making and stuff. We talked a little bit about I mean, I don't know actually if we've talked about like housing and stuff for the ancient people. I mean, I always assumed they lived in mud huts and stuff like that. Might have mentioned that for the Mesopotamians, what they made their houses out of and things like
Mainly
that.
mud.
Yeah, I think we did talk about that. But like for this time period, I want to talk about because people out there that don't know and they're listening to this podcast are like, oh, I'm interested in this culture. They'll probably want to also know like, were their houses made of wood? Were they made of brick? Things like that. And I know
The
Matthew,
small things.
it sounds
um,
like you know some things about maybe not that
who, me?
granular. You're the one that was like, I know the architecture stuff.
Yeah, I know, like, okay, when it comes to architecture and architectural history, most of the time, the things that we have references for are like larger scale buildings and
Oh
like
yeah,
ruins from that. Like I can say for a fact, without a shadow of a doubt, that the first German cities were Roman cities. They were cities
Yes.
that were built by the Romans, so they had the Roman kind of cookie cutter stamp to them because all Roman cities were originally military camps. So they had the forum, they had basilicas, they had arenas, baths most of the time too. But so that's what we have a lot, and you're going to see if you were to research the architecture during this time, you will see that all churches all cathedrals, not so much Orthodox, but all cathedrals, Catholic cathedrals, have their origins from the Roman Basilican Hall. And there's a lot of discussion between historians about why this was chosen, why this was used, because the Romans had their temples that were based off of the classical Greek design of like the Parthenon and the Temple of Zeus. So we had this design, but why the Christians decided to go take and not use these places is because they viewed it as sacrilegious to be using these pagan centers of worship. So they wanted something that was more communal, which goes with the Christian faith of like, we want people to be like, it's the common people's place. It's not like there's no real separation between the clergy in the beginning and the people. They are all one. So basilican halls were used for a lot of things in ancient Rome. They were used as like courthouses, markets, places just to gather, indoor forums, basically. So you kind of get the idea of it's a communal area, but it has no connection to the pagan gods. So they start using these as their temples of worship because if you think about it now, when you see the people walking around out like preaching out in the open, that's basically what the Basilican Hall was to them is they got to do it indoors and you're
yeah,
talking to all the people there. So they would just preach there. And eventually when Christianity would become the official state religion of the Romans by Constantine, that's when a lot happens. Like there's some shady shit that goes down, a lot of burning, a lot of destruction. But hey, I'm a Christian. JC is my number one homie, but a lot of bad stuff happen. But once that becomes the state religion, basically all the temples are abandoned. Basically, all the Roman classical temples are just
yeah, yeah.
abandoned
and
or
and,
destroyed.
might I add something real quick?
Yes, you can.
Just to kind of like answer like kind of like Andrew's initial question. Kind of, I'm not saying that you didn't answer it, Matthew, but I think you did an excellent
I
job.
think I'm taking a little bit long route.
Yeah, but just real quick to answer that question, I do think that for a lot of villages, a lot of their if it wasn't a very important building, it would be mainly built out of wood and
Yes.
such. as for as large towns and or cities go for, I say like a lot of the buildings would be made out of stone, not necessarily from like the Roman concrete or as ornate as the Roman brick, but a lot of them would
Hmm.
be carved stone basically. Um, but another thing that kind of ties into what you're saying about this idea of kind of rejecting the old Roman way was that ties in here is that at least I know with the Franks and for quite a while, as Charlemagne was crowned to be the new emperor of the Romans, air quotes. um,
Thank you.
a lot of the Franks still kind of wanted to still really wanted to resent that whole being a Roman, although they relied a whole lot on the Romans, mainly because they got their religion from the Romans, they got Christianity from them, and since the Franks were illiterate, especially during the time of Clovis, when they had to employ Roman
Scholars.
scholars to write their language for them. So that's just a funny little tidbit. They were illiterate, yet they still became a huge powerhouse.
Yeah, yeah.
um,
These are
so
very good points. I
so
just
um,
want to say.
so yes, that ties heavily into that. The like as when we look at the Franks, they really want to keep their identity as a Frank. They wanted to keep that idea of a Frank, maybe not necessarily a German, but of a Frank. And I imagine that a lot of the Saxons really wanted to keep their identity as a Saxon, mainly probably because of the war with Charlemagne. They wanted to keep being a pagan, and being a pagan meant that you were a Saxon.
Yeah.
So.
Hmm.
All right. All right. That's interesting about that illiterate thing. Because I know I touched up on that earlier, so that's probably why
Mhm.
you, which reminded you of it. Yeah, you don't really see that through history. Kind of like how we've talked about in the last, or not in the last, in the first couple of episodes, how they were illiterate, these civilizations. So anything that we kind of learned about their civilization either came through like legends, monuments, or pictures. So it's interesting that we have a culture here that couldn't write, but they basically found someone. We're like, hey, um,
Do this for us.
can you do this for us?
Yeah,
Because
basically.
They
we're not
were
able to do it.
they were good at realizing how to kind of an inclusion theory of like we don't want to be classified as Romans, but we understand this technology and these things that we need from the Romans to help us have our
To cement,
culture and
yeah,
society.
to cement our place in the books
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. But they don't, but they want to be strictly different
themselves.
from
Yeah,
the Romans.
they want to be
So
themselves.
it's a very smart move on their
yeah, it's a
part, and
really
it's a
good
smart move on a
foresight.
lot of civilizations' part to do that. Like inclusion it's one of the Romans' number one things that they did, but I'm not going to talk about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, inclusion.
So as we're progressing through this, we've stated that the Franks basically established themselves as the first true medieval kingdom, and others will follow them. What other what else shall we talk about? This idea of medieval Germany, like.
Um, well, there's like I said, there's so much to talk about.
Mm,
A big thing that I always want to talk about, which of course, ironically, these civilizations that we're picking don't really have them, but are the major conflicts that change how the world became what it is today. Because I think a big goal of this podcast is to educate people on why things are the way they are.
mm,
We don't realize it. I think already in this episode, you talking about the Saxons and what they were and how they migrated and how they basically made English.
mm,
Because if you asked everyone, or not even everyone today, if you go to a high school today, to a senior class or whatever,
mm,
and talking small town, big city, anywhere really, and you ask them, why does everyone speak English? The common answer probably will be, oh, because of the English Empire. They took over so many places. The sun never sets on the empire of the
British
English,
Empire.
the British. Thank you.
Who
Um,
speak the Queen or King's English?
yeah, exactly. So they would probably say that. But going back farther, it's like, well, yes, but it wasn't just a colony because, like, for me and other people, I'm sure you would think, oh, there was a group of people, a colony of people on England, and they lived there, and they built up from there, and they learned English there, and then eventually they got big enough to start branching out. That's how most people think of things. And already, like all this stuff about Rome, I knew Rome was a big deal. Everyone knows Rome is a big deal, or the Romans, not even just Rome. The Romans are a big deal. But it's hard for people to realize that Germany is here because of Rome.
Mhm.
Britain is here
Yeah.
because of Rome. Like all of Europe is here because of what the Romans did.
Yeah.
And the amount of influence that they had and still to this day have on our civilization, it's things that I want to like find out about. And also, we're talking about Japan. That doesn't really relate to us as Americans directly, but it definitely does. Those times that we were talking about them, like uh, the nature gods. I forgot already what they're called, and their customs and their
Mhm.
respect and things like that. That heavily relates to how modern day Japan works.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I
So
think I think
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think I think it's all just very interesting, and I think it's something that people, if they are interested, should want to look into. So,
definitely, So
um, I
with
do have
this,
a, I do
oh,
have just a quick thing, real quick,
Go ahead.
and if to answer, I don't know if any of the viewers might have this question, but I will go ahead and answer it. Um, if you think that you could travel back in time and speak to Saxon, by the way, Saxon English is now just called Old English.
uh-huh,
So if you think you could go back in time and speak to a Saxon and think that you would either understand or they would understand you, no,
yeah,
no,
definitely
no.
not.
English has changed so much since then.
I mean,
So
already now. I mean, this is obviously apples to oranges, like way
mhm.
different. But even now, like you do have British English and then American English. Obviously, not as big of a difference, not even close. But even there,
There are their subtleties and differences.
exactly. And then now take that, amplify it by hundreds of years, and also, yeah. By the way, internet isn't a thing, so they're not communicating at all. So things are going to change, things are going to progress quite drastically. Um, so yeah. Up next, I'm not sure. Should we just jump into how they formed their borders? Because when I was reading about all this stuff, that was a big thing that happened.
Establishing borders, establishing like
Yeah.
kingdoms and such.
Yeah, when when it was broken up into the three kingdoms. Did you guys learn about that? Write about that?
Does that apply to the Franks kind of?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So, from what I know of is that when Clovis were to die, I think that I I I am very iffy on this, but I don't think necessarily it was his three sons that did it. I think it was those that came after them because
Oh, was
the
it?
idea. Oh, by the way, the reason why medieval monarchy, the idea of medieval monarchy also attributes to the Franks one tradition that would last up until basically now is the tradition that when the father or whoever is the leader dies, then the oldest takes over, and that was there like way before. But it
Mm-hmm.
would be the Franks that fully cements that in feudalism. That
Yeah.
this is how it should be. This is how power progresses. To you know what I mean? This is how the succession of power is to be.
Yeah.
This is how it should be.
I'm like unlocking the memory banks. I remember the bloodline being a big thing
Mm,
about this. Like that was very important to them. And eventually, the bloodline does die out.
yes.
Matthew, are you cutting your nails right now?
I'm sorry. I bent back one of my nails at work and I had to cut it off because it was gross. I'm not gonna get into it, but yeah, I fucked it up and it
Levi,
was kind of hurting.
Levi,
Uh,
we're gonna have to take care of some business over the internet. Um, how hard do you
I'm
think I have
sorry.
to slap for him to actually feel it? I think I can do it.
I'm sorry. My thumbnail was hurting.
I mean, I'm gonna.
Jeez.
You could. I know you can mute your mic.
Hey guys, can we talk about medieval Germany?
Yeah, I want to talk about medieval Germany, Andrew.
Let's talk about the First Reich.
The Holy Roman
Oh
Empire.
God! Yeah, you have to say it like
I
that.
mean, you really shouldn't have said it like that. I understand what you mean, but a lot of people are not going to like hearing the
Now, here's
First
the thing.
Reich.
When I was reading about this, and again, this is one of those things that, oh, the Third Reich. Ah, I've heard of that. Nazis, bad guys. I told you this would around to the Nazis.
Dear God.
You hear the Third Reich. Never in my mind did I ever think, oh, that's a Roman thing. And like the First Reich, Reich means
Empire.
Yeah,
yeah, it's kind of like empire and thing like that.
it's basically empire.
I want to make that connection though. Jokes aside about it being called the First Reich, because or eventually to the Second Reich, which was the German Empire, and then the Third Reich, which was the Nazis. I did want to make that connection back to how this relates to Rome. How important Rome was that even its influence before and after, they kept those traditions, they kept those names, they kept things like that from the Roman Empire. And brought it to modern day Germany. That's how strong these connections are. It was not like the Romans were influential the first 100, 200 years. I wanted people to know that, even today, the Romans were and are pretty influential on how things work in Germany.
I just want to use an example of to like cement how influential they were. The name Kaiser, which was and I think during the Second Reich, the name of the like emperor of Germany, Kaiser is literally to translate it is Caesar. That's what it means. Same thing with Czar. Czar is from Caesar. That's how
Mhm.
strong Rome has influenced our world. But that's a digression. That was just an example to show like
So when we're
lots.
talking about this
Yes.
idea
Thank you.
of the Holy Roman Empire, as you said, the First Reich, in a way, yeah, you're kind of right. Yes, it could be called that. However, one thing that is very notable about the Holy Roman Empire is that nobody really ever called it the Holy Roman Empire. It was usually always just called, at least in their time period, at least from what I've seen from articles that would talk about the writings from that time period, is that they always just kind of said the Empire or Holy Empire.
Yeah,
So they never just called it the Holy Roman Empire. They always just they usually just referred to it as the Empire.
yeah, which is important too because I mean could lead to someone to suspect that it's kind of egotistical to be like, oh, we're the empire. Um, but yeah, that's just me. That's how I view it.
I mean, I'm pretty sure during the Roman times they didn't call everybody didn't address it as like the Roman Empire. It was just the Empire. So that's probably what they were trying to piggyback off of for like
Mm.
what is it? For like authority reasons. For like we are the successors to the Roman Empire. Basically, is what they're saying there is like we have the authority, the prestige, the pedigree of the Roman Empire. That's kind of what I get from what you said there and how they refer to it as that. And that is something you will see a lot of times throughout history is people who will try to use the Roman Empire as a source of pedigree, a source of authority, and a source of right to rule.
All right, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So we talked about Otto, right?
Oh yes, Otto the First.
Yes.
Ooh,
No, we have not talked about Otto the
we have
First.
not.
Let's
Otto
talk
the
about Otto.
Okay, so Otto, just real quick, Otto will be the first. I don't know where he was from, but he's always kind of just always stated as the first German and mainly kind of like the first real emperor
Mm-hmm.
of the Holy Roman Empire, and those after him will be mainly Germans. Um, I think almost always Germans after him.
I
But
believe so. Yeah.
so Otto will be the first German emperor
Yeah.
of the Holy Roman Empire,
Yeah. Crowned by the Pope himself.
crowned by the Pope himself. And there will be a lot of discretion forwards between the papacy and the empire.
Um.
Which, oh, go ahead.
No. 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 You go ahead, please.
I want
Go
to
on.
I want to say that it's kind of a power struggle between the
The Pope and the
papacy,
emperor.
yeah, the Pope and the Emperor, which eventually does boil over, but it's kind of out of our time range. In 1527, when Pope Clements the Second, no, that's not right. Uh, Pope Clements basically gets attacked by the Holy Roman Emperor because he tried to assert authority over him, and the Holy Roman Emperor was like, "Okay, cool, I'm gonna sack Rome now." Like literally, base like very vaguely what happened. We will get in depth in it later on because there's just a whole series of events that leads to that, and we should that will be something for another time that we can
Basically
bam on.
throughout the course of the Holy Roman Empire's reign, there will always be kind of like this turmoil between the Pope and the Emperor. That mainly happens towards kind of like the probably the mid to like kind of later years of the empire. But initially, I would say that the Emperor's role was to protect the Pope.
Yeah.
Yeah, the papacy, the Pope, um, the Catholics stir up a lot of problems, is what I'm going to say. In Germany,
It's kind of.
especially
It's kind of a
during the
big
Middle
statement.
Ages.
It's a big bold statement to say.
Well,
There go our
they,
Catholic fans. First the
well,
pot fans, now our Catholic fans, and then don't even get me started on the Chinese. They're gone by
yeah,
episode one.
I'm so sorry, my pottery people, but like, you got to break the pots to learn the time periods. But so the Catholic Church is really just trying to extend its influence and authority over basically everybody in medieval Europe during like the entire time. They have the French who are staunchly Catholic, and then they are forcing the Germans to be Catholic, and this will later turn into the Protestant Revolution and the 30 Years' War and whatnot. But the Catholic Church has a very big problem with sharing power. And to exemplify this, I want to talk about the Great Schism, which does affect Germany during this time because they are Catholic and will affect crusades from Germany during that time when people accidentally sack Constantinople because they're like, oops, we thought it was the Holy Land, though. My bad. So the Catholic Church just the Catholic Church and the Greek Orthodox Church had an understanding for a while because they agreed on most of the things, but just had a few differ on doctrine and a bit of practice, but they got along mostly. But from what I understand and what I believe, it was the Catholic Church making a power grab when they just said, oh, Greek Orthodox, well, Eastern Orthodox at this time, you're excommunicated. And the Orthodox Pope went back and excommunicated them, but it was prompted by the Catholics trying to consolidate power in Western Europe and keep the influence of the Byzantine Empire and the Orthodox Church out of Europe.
All right.
And it worked.
It definitely worked.
Anything anything to put more blame on the Catholics. I will always support that and agree with that. Levi, I want to kick it over to you real quick. Just go ahead and look at your what do you have next up in your notes right now?
That's just it. I never make notes for this. I just
Oh, you don't.
I've yet to make notes unless
was,
like
was
it's
it
going to be
Matthew
like a
that? Matthew, you're the one that makes notes.
Yeah, I didn't take too many notes this time because I like Germany and all. I like the idea of Germany, but when it comes to medieval, like the places that have the like coolest battles and coolest things going on during medieval times, I personally believe is between France and England.
Well,
Germany
let's
has always been like a side character to an extent
why don't
during this
we
time,
why don't
but
we talk about that then? Because France has yet to be a thing yet when the Germanic state was created, correct? France was
Mhm.
not real, right?
France wasn't real, but France comes from the Franks.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what I want to talk about right there. And this can lead into later episodes where we do talk about the French in medieval time because I agree. These are again building blocks.
I
This
will
is
say
the start
one
of.
thing that go ahead, go ahead.
I was just gonna say this is the start of Europe really taking form. Is with this state. It seems at least that's what I've read.
I will say that one thing that is very interesting about the medieval time period within Germany are their castles. Those
Yes,
are
Ooh.
very cool, very awesome.
that still stand
Um,
to this day.
one thing that is also very cool in Germany at the in the medieval time period is the Teutonic Knights, which are basically Templars, but they're not. So
Yeah. All right. Well, why don't we go ahead then and jump ahead to when the three brothers take over their areas.
okay, yeah, yeah. We go back to that. We try. I think we've tried to talk about this, but we keep getting sidetracked. I'm gonna
My
be real honest. I really don't know when the break happens. I couldn't tell you when the break happens. I also couldn't tell you the names of those three
Let's
kingdoms, but
call them.
I do know that Charlemagne comes around and just reunifies the Franks.
Oh, he does.
I'm pretty sure that was Charlemagne's goal,
Oh, well.
and kill the Saxons.
Oh, okay, there it is. Like no one ever just reunifies. They got ulterior motives. And like there it is. They killed Saxons.
But like I said, I really couldn't tell you too much about that, and
All
I
right.
want.
From what I read and saw, it was just that some dude had three kids. These brothers each took a part, which were like modern day France, Germany, and then kind of Central Europe. Um, and yeah, I have no idea what else happens after that. I'm gonna be
I
super honest. This
I
was
I know
Matthew.
a little bit. Yeah, I know a little bit.
Take control.
Okay. Well, you are correct. This is around the time of Charlemagne, and it is his children. And what has happened is just like good old times, after dad dies and he leaves strict things like, oh, this kid gets this piece and oh, this kid gets that piece and that. It divided up. So the kingdom of Germany was technically a kingdom of Francia, as we have been talking about, but it was East Francia. There was an East, Middle, and West. West is what is modern day France. The middle is kind of like Switzerland and northern Italy, with like a weird sliver right through, like, kind of, would that be the Netherlands? Kind of like that area. And the Alsace Lorraine, which Levi, I know, knows about the Alsace Lorraine and how much controversy it has had in
Quite a
history.
bit of controversy.
Yeah, so that it's a contested area for a very long time. And then you have East Francia, which is Germany in the modern sense of Germany.
Mhm.
So there was a civil war that broke out but after Charlemagne died, between these three kingdoms, because everyone is trying to be like Charlemagne and like unite the whole thing. But in the end, they all sign a peace treaty to keep these three different kingdoms divided, but have strict borders to them at this point, which sets up the playing field for the later parts of Germany's life and the creation of the Holy Roman Empire, which is what basically Middle Francia, East Francia is kind of like the big part of the Holy Roman Empire, but it absorbs a lot of the Middle Francia, which is the Italy and Switzerland part.
Mm-hmm. All right.
So yeah, it was that's basically all I can remember from that. And that was my that was a bit of my architecture history too that I knew about that, because after that is when you start seeing the architecture really skyrocket on its own and
Mhm.
take its own form.
I see. I see. Well, it seems like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like we've exhausted all that we know about this time period for this area already.
I think there's other things we could touch upon.
Yeah. So
Just
what I want to do now, um, as people who are listening to this probably have realized, it's there's a lot going on, and even if it was more documented, there are still a lot of things like, oh, there were a bunch of tribes that did this, and then this happened, and then these things here, and then a lot of, it's not like today, is what I'm saying. It's not like the 1600s, 1500s. So it's also a very big time period. So what I want to do for this next 20, 30 minutes, however long it takes, is that I want you guys to touch upon anything that you want to about this time period. um, I'll let you each go first. Levi, I'll let you go first, and then Matthew, you can touch up on anything you want to. I've already exhausted everything that I wanted to touch up on that I know about. After that, I want to just talk a little bit more about what we think about this nation, and of course, we'll do the ranking of the nations and things like that. So, Levi, do you want to take it away?
so it can be over anything
Uh, of this
within this time period.
Yeah. And just anything that you wanted to either talk about or mention or discuss, anything at all.
I think one thing I do kind of want to I think retouch upon and such is that that Germany, Germany, yes, Germany, uh, would God, I'm sorry, I'm trying to find the words here, trying to stay on topic. In fact, actually, no, screw that. I'll just talk about something real quick that relates to this time period. My man William the Conqueror.
Who is
um,
William the Conqueror?
William the Conqueror. He comes from Normandy, France. I believe he was a Norman. Who are the Normans? That's a completely different discussion for another day.
It's like
But
every single thing about this, but yeah,
but William will he goes to Britain. He conquers the Anglos. He conquers the Britons, and then from there on out, thus kind of like up until the War of the Roses, which is a huge war between France and England. I think is like kind of that's kind of towards the end of the French and English wars in the medieval period. He's basically the reason for the beginning of I guess we could even say he is like the precursor to the British monarchy, the true, yeah.
yeah.
So
All right, is that all you wanted to touch up on?
that's basically all I really kind of want to touch upon. There's so much, yet I just don't feel comfortable because I just don't know too much, and I will not speak of it
Hey,
because I
fair
don't know
enough.
too much.
I Fair enough. I totally agree, and that's why I'm not really talking about much because, like, I know of things, but definitely not
I
enough.
I don't know enough to go in depth on them.
Yeah. So, Matthew, is there anything else that you want to touch up upon for this time period?
Um, I mean,
It's okay if you don't.
no, like I don't know if I really talked into the full development of the architecture and how like the twin tower facade got added to the cathedrals during the Carolingian period, which was a sign of kingship because God is king. Jesus was king over all, man. So that added on to that. And then they kept striving to be more and more kind of ethereal and plastic, which led to the Gothic designs of very famous buildings like Notre Dame. So I really like architecture, and I was gonna go more into that, but Germany is kind of lackluster with a lot of its ancient cathedrals, mm, but that are noteworthy. There's a lot of Carolingian period ones with the twin tower facade and whatnot, but like when it comes to actual the Gothic, which is basically named after the German Goths
Hmm.
style, most of them are in like France and actually Spain. So there's not much for me to touch on there.
All right, no problem. So to all of our medieval Germany fans, we're sorry. Uh, we talked
Basically, yeah.
we talked about a lot of the interesting things, but hit up on a lot of the big points. Um, Definitely more to talk about than the Kofun and the Yayoi period, but I think also in the same breath, those were more interesting to talk about, and there's a lot more that we could expand upon, which I'm sure there is here too. It was just, it's like we said at the beginning, this wasn't even a nation, right?
Yeah,
This
Mhm.
is more
like
about
I could
Rome.
have I could have brought up the Spanish Inquisition, but that really only affects France. Like
Yeah,
when we talk about medieval France, oh my god, oh my
yeah.
god, it's gonna be
So
endless.
what I want to do right now is I want to rank this nation, and then I want to talk about which nation we're going to do after that,
God.
and then I want to do, since this podcast is a little shorter than the rest, and if you guys are okay with it, I want to do shoot the shit power hour, not actually an hour. It's like 15-20 minutes, where the audience is still getting to know us as people,
Oh, yeah.
and they are kind of getting to know who we are over these discussions and things like this. But I think just talking candidly for about 15 minutes would also help them get to know who we are a little more.
Okay.
So if you guys are comfortable and good with that, um,
Okay.
we might. I am just throwing this out here right now. As we still continue to figure out what this podcast cast is, even though I think we got a pretty good foundation right now, and I think we're working pretty well with it. Who knows, maybe if we do 20, 30, 50 episodes of this, it's completely different. We have a whole totally different format. Maybe we'll come back to medieval Germany, but for now I think we're going to leave it at where we are. um yeah, so let's go ahead and let's rank this time period. All right, our rankings right now: at number one we have the Akkadian and Assyrian Mesopotamia period. And at number two, we have the Yayoi and Kofun period of Japan. Gentlemen, where would you rank medieval Germany? Matthew, I want you to start.
Well, the things that I want to talk about, wanted to talk about most with medieval Germany, I realized like a day or two ago, are not medieval Germany. It's more of the Renaissance. So, with that in mind, what medieval Germany was, it was the foundation of so much. So
Mhm.
much. It had to happen. It had to go down this way to where it's still just a bunch of these messed up fucking states that really just have like their own little fiefdoms underneath the Holy Roman Empire, which is just like a, in my personal opinion, a bloated facade of power. But I would say that it's not better than the Assyrian Akkadian period, but it's definitely better than the Yayoi and Kofun period
You think?
because oh yeah, because well from the history that I know that those set up the samurai and the Yamato clan, but this sets up the 30 Years' War. This sets up the Alsace and Lorraine. This stuff has impact. Like, yeah, the samurai are cool and all, and they have their influence over the time, but things that happen after medieval Germany turns into the Renaissance
All right.
will affect us up into the 20th century and lead to part of the reason for two of the deadliest conflicts in human history.
All right. I hear you there, but when, at least how I see this, ranking the nations, yes, it does lead up to that, and it does lead up to all these different things. But for this thing alone, just looking at medieval Germany, personally, I'm like, this is kind of boring. I thought when I was thinking medievals, I think I'm thinking of France, honestly, when I think of medieval
Yeah.
times and things like that. I think that's the one I think of, or Britain and things like that. Um, Not Germany. Germany for me in medieval was a little too bare bones, especially for the time period it is. When we're talking about the Yayoi and Kofun period, that was BC still, leading up to, and it went
Yeah.
up to, Kofun went up to like year 300, I think, or something like that.
Yeah.
But still, we're still talking about old times, and same with Mesopotamia. This is old times, so it kind of made sense that there was so much that, it's kind of boring. It's setting things up. It's not too much is happening. There was
Yeah,
some.
but you've got to understand too at the same time when it comes to actual things that were developed in the world stage at this time, Germany, proper Germany was the frontier still. So there was just
Yeah,
untamed land.
yeah, no, exactly, and that's what I'm saying is that at this point, the Roman Empire had been there for how long? Like by the year 500 AD, Matthew. Like how old was the Roman Empire? Like
The Roman Empire would have been like 500 years old almost.
exactly. Like it's really old. A lot has happened, and yes, it is the new frontier. But I just feel like, and we talked about it's.
No, no, no. When I say frontier, I don't mean like the way we think of it in the United States of frontier. I was like, oh, Manifest Destiny and cowboys and small towns and shit.
No,
I
that's
mean
not
like
what I'm saying.
there was a wall. They built a fortification along the Rhine and forts and outposts, and beyond that wall, there was Roman influence, but it was not Roman domain. It
Yeah, no,
was
that's what I'm.
undeveloped.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And I think just taking it, comparing it these two other civilizations, and taking the time period that it's in and stuff, and what actually happens, disregarding what it leads up to, because honestly, you can say all this leads
Touche.
up to bigger things. You could say the Kofun period leads up to making imperialistic Japan, which leads to World War II. You could connect all these dots to bigger things. But personally, I would say that those other two for me were more interesting. That's just me. I think. So where would you rank it? Like just to get a definitive answer, would you rank it?
Second place.
I was about to say, sounds like second place. All right. Levi, I think it's in third place. Matthew thinks it's in second place. What do you rank medieval Germany?
Good question. Um, I think I personally, for me, I would rank it as two,
All
and I
right.
will give you my reason. And this might tie back to the connecting the dots thing, but correct me if I'm wrong. But when we went back, so when we were ranking in the last episode, we were mainly kind of just looking at the impact these civilizations made, right?
Yeah.
And how important they were. And of course, we ranked Mesopotamia over Japan because, well, Mesopotamia did everything.
Exactly.
I feel as though as if Germany is more impactful. Sorry, medieval Germany is more impactful than the Kofu and what's the other one? I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
boy.
Yeah.
Yaoi. The Kofu and the Yaoi period is because really because of Germany and these tribes and such. Now we can definitely argue that this happened way before, but we really get our modern sense of Western culture from it, and
Hmm.
I think that's very important, especially since we live in a Western culture society. And I just think that medieval Germany has just had a larger impact on the world stage.
All right. Well put. Well put. All right. So with that in mind, we will now move the Yaoi and Kofun period down one and replace it with medieval Germany. So, ladies and
Now
gentlemen,
that's what I'm talking about.
your new ranking for the nations that we have talked about. Number 1, the Akkadian and Assyrian Mesopotamia period. Number 2, the medieval Germany period. And number 3, the Yayoi and Kofun Japan period. Those are your rankings. Up next, boys, are you ready?
Yes.
So I was thinking, instead of doing a new list of 3 every single time, um, that's a good way to get things lost in the weeds. What I'm going to do instead is I am going to whatever. So we chose medieval Germany last time, so that's out. I still have on the list the ancient Indians from India that go from who knows when to 700 AD, and then the Aztec Empire. I'm going to keep those on there. Now, I don't want you to feel pressured at all to pick either of these places compared to any new ones. So if it's like week 7 and the Aztecs are still on there, or India's still on there or whatever, don't feel like, it's been on there long, we should choose that. This is just so we don't like mix in a new batch and then it was like, oh, we forgot about the Aztecs and we never do them again. All right. So I went ahead, and last time we got more modern. This time we're getting way more modern. And I think an interesting and hot topic to talk about would be to talk about China from the 1930s to the 1990s.
I'm all for it.
Oh
So I
boy.
went ahead
Yes.
and threw in China into there. Okay. This is obviously very, very recent history compared to Mesopotamia,
I'm all for it.
medieval
Yeah.
Germany. But I think with this podcast, we want to show that history repeats.
Can we change the years real quick if we
Yes,
were to do
those
China?
years were pulled out of my butt. Tell me years that matter for China.
1900 through 1990.
Okay, so you just want that whole. Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't
The whole
know.
20, basically the whole 20th century.
Okay,
20th century China.
there
20th
we go.
century
Yeah, I'll
China.
do that. I didn't know if that would be too much because I know with modern history, it's a
Oh no,
lot.
baby, we gotta talk about those warlords in the 20s.
Yes.
So, that's the one I have inserted. Just grabbed it in my fist and right through the chest, kind of like an Indiana Jones here. He pulls out his heart. I just shoved it right in there. 20th century China. What do you guys think? Do you want to talk about the Aztec Empire, ancient India, or 20th century China? Mind you, and I want to let our audience know, I think that there is much more information and much more we can talk about these 3 alone compared to what we talked about today.
I
So,
believe. Can I already make my
absolutely, yes.
my choice? At first, I really wanted to do ancient sorry the Aztecs because I already kind of knew a little bit about them. The only thing I know from ancient India, of course, is Chandragupta. the that Chandragupta, not the other Chandragupta.
Thanks for specifying.
But as soon as you brought up 20th century China is just so crazy, so just.
And I think it's something that a lot of
It's very interesting. It's very
don't
interesting
know about, because when we know about China,
because
you go to Tiananmen Square, people don't know about that. They don't know what happened.
What
Way to
about
go,
Tiananmen Square 2 in
way to
Hong
go,
Kong?
Andrew! You just banned the you just banned the podcast yet again.
Yeah, he did. He honestly did.
Double banned. Do a whole episode over them. No way. No. Okay.
This is never going to air in China.
So are you? Is that what you're picking, Levi? Are you picking 20th century?
I'm going to pick 20th century China because China is a nation rich and filled with all kinds of history. Yet in the last 100 years, so much more was made in that fucking nation.
Yeah.
Dude, they've been smoking something. Matthew, between the Aztecs, ancient India, and 20th century China, which are you most intrigued by?
Well, I really wanted. I'm right there with Levi. Like I was ready to do the Aztecs because it was going. It's gonna be. It was gonna be interesting, but when it comes to, I personally believe we need to get people a little bit more informed on China and how they have become such a global powerhouse now. Like,
Oh yeah.
I
and
thought
they
you were
we need to explain why. I want to be able to elaborate why I fucking hate modern China, and I want to have my fucking facts behind me of why these guys suck fucking dick. And like I want to like tell people and let them know like China is not our friend. China has never been our friend, but we pretended because of goddamn Richard Nixon. But anyways, like I just have to. I wanted to talk about the Aztecs so bad. They were so cool. And like fucking Tenochtitlan, their fucking capital city, which is now modern day Mexico City, was built on a fucking lake. It was like a floating city almost. It's so fucking cool. But no, we need to tell people about China and their cocksuckery douchebag ways.
my gosh. Well, some raw passion going out there. So that's a vote for China. It doesn't really matter what I say at this
This is
point.
democracy.
Yeah, this is a democracy. This is real democracy, unlike anywhere else on earth.
Don't do it.
America. Um, so yeah, that'll be the next topic is 20th century China. Just for fun, I would have picked the Aztecs. That's only because I recently read about 20th century China. When I was playing that Ghost of Tsushima game, it got me learning about the Mongols, which led to China, and then I started reading about modern day China and things like that. So I already kind of read about them, but I guess that's beneficial because less work to do. Um, so yeah, our next topic will be 20th century China. Like I said last time, podcast is now coming out every Wednesday.
I thought you said Sunday,
Sunday, yes. Oh my gosh. It's
dipshit.
it's midnight, all right? You know what? Let's get kick a
I
chair
think
back.
it's a good time to tell the audience about
Kick a,
ourselves.
kick a seat back, all right? We're moving into the Groundhouse Power Hour.
In the groundhouse power.
That's what I'm calling this. This is the Groundhouse Power Hour where Andrew just lays the shit down and says what's real, all right? I'm reclined in my chair. Susan's asleep in bed. And let me
You
tell you,
got your fucking Doritos. You got your Mountain Dew ready.
you know why I'm fucking saying Wednesday.
You got your Reddit boards open.
It's Wednesday. And anyone who knows anything knows that we record this on Tuesdays, except we're not today. We're recording it on Wednesday. And let me tell you something else. You're right. Post on Sunday. That was it. That's all I wanted to say. But it's almost midnight, and I ate so much pulled pork today. I ate so much. I'm tired. After Thanksgiving, when you just pound yourself full and you got to unzip the pants in front of grandma, even though it's a little weird, but you're like, I'm about to burst. You just got to zip it down.
Jesus Christ.
Open, eat your little picker. That's kind of how I felt today because I ate so much pulled pork. And I've been tired, but then this little dude was like, "Hey, we gotta do the podcast at 10 o'clock." I'm like, "These podcasts are like 2 hours," but here we are.
Sounds
That's
like
what
a
I'm
lot
talking
of bitching to me.
about. It is. It is a lot of.
You don't.
Levi, how was your day? I know we already kind of did this, but how for real? I know it's been stressful, but like, you do anything today, or you just kind of like sitting in the middle of dungeon?
I took another LSAT practice test, and I have been improving very much.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
I think out of the three I've taken, I improved 4 points on each one. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but the LSAT is a very hard test,
Mm-hmm.
and it requires a hell of a lot of thinking, requires a hell of a lot of reading, it requires a hell of a lot of deduction and decision making. And one thing that's also important, if you just can't pick an answer, you just have to go with your instinct.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You just gotta guess. That's literally what I did on every test ever in my life.
But,
Um, it's true.
So,
Uh,
to anybody who is planning on wanting to become a lawyer or planning to, basically become a lawyer, what is the LSAT? The LSAT is basically the main test that law schools will ask you to take. and your score, along with your college GPA, is what basically decides you getting to getting into law school. The LSAT is out of a score of 0 to 180. Average scores are 150. Um,
Dang.
the best looking scores are upwards of 170. So if you basically get a 170, like I think a lot of the top law schools in the United States are looking at you. So
That's crazy. You that's what you're in for, right? You're looking at Harvard and stuff.
no, no, not at all. I think today I got a 147 on it. I think
Hey, pretty good.
my initial test I took, which was about a month ago, was like a 136.
Yeah, I was about to
So
say
I've
that.
been I've been studying like 5 hours every day for this.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's
good. Well, speaking of studying, I actually saw you this weekend,
you did see
which
me this weekend.
kind of threw you off from your studying because I gave you a fancy little hat.
Well, technically I bought it.
Okay, well, yeah, you technically bought it. But
I would have liked to have been given it, but
what happened? I walked out of that place, and if you remember, I Venmoed Susan right away to pay for rent,
okay.
and
Oh, okay, okay.
I walked out of that place with an empty bag, and I was like, "How the fuck did this just happen?" I walked in with a
So
VR
so I
headset,
paid your rent basically.
kind of. You paid half of it. I
I
walked
paid
in
half your rent, homie.
VR headset, and I walked out with an empty bag and less money than when I walked in. How the fuck does that happen? Like, how is that like a normal thing that happens to people? Because I'm pretty sure it's not, but it happens to me. So, um, yeah. Have you played it at all? Have you been enjoying it, or?
I've been playing a hell of a lot. So
Yeah,
I,
man. I'm glad to
uh,
hear that. It
but
sat on my
I
wall for so long, and it's just like I played it like once every 3 months. It's just I have the wireless one. I just don't feel use for it anymore.
I do want to ask Matthew, how was your day? Because I know I think you fucked up your thumb a little bit.
Oh no, that was just from the bit of work. My day has been fantastic. Not gonna lie, as it was my birthday yesterday, and I stayed up till 5 in the morning with some of my friends from work, and yeah, we had a good time. Walked to Waffle House at 3 in the morning.
As you do.
Yeah, yeah, as you do.
That sounds
Had
nice, actually.
had some good talks, had some brews, and then I woke up at 7:30 in the morning for some reason, and then I did my thing, went to work today, and not gonna lie, I am tired as shit. Like, just tired. My body right now is like still going because I've had like 3 cups of coffee today. I drank a gallon of Gatorade. I drank a kombucha and I pounded an energy drink. Like, my body is in shambles, but I am not gonna stop because
That's a lot. That's quite a bit of caffeine.
yeah, after this, I'm going to play some Among Us. So
Mhm.
Yeah,
don't stop.
that's kind of what I was saying. I mean, obviously, I was joking about the pulled pork, but today has been, I wouldn't say fantastic. I've been doing that tutoring thing, and I got the other teacher actually quit, so I'm picking up her shifts now too, and it's just a lot. Today I had to bounce between 2 classrooms for 5 hours, and I came home, did a little DoorDash because I'm trying to make some extra scrap to get that PS5 and that Series X because I'm a mad lad and decided I need both. And a new Oculus next week too because I'm just really insane. But I did a little DoorDash. Then we went out to eat, and then we've been doing this thing where we have to do 3 miles every day. I'm gonna be honest. I'm surprised Susan hasn't broken up with me yet because I bitch like a little baby every single time that we do it. It's been awful.
That's because you're a bitch boy.
It kind of is. I hate exercising now, which is terrible because I used to love it. I used to run all the time, but now it's just the worst. But we did that, and then we did this podcast. It's already midnight, and I have to be at the that house at 8 a.m. and they live about 45 minutes away. So
Crazy.
yeah, I have to get up at like 7, drive there, stay there till 3:30. Thankfully, though, when I get back, thankfully, um, I don't have anything else to do because I'm pretty sure I'm going to quit my other job. So that is a nice thing that is happening. But yeah, I'm tired. I'm very tired, and I don't have Gatorade. We don't buy sugary drinks or anything like that. This is a water household now, sadly.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I don't usually have like that stuff on hand. It's just where I work. It's readily available. And
yeah,
after a night of abusing my liver, I was deciding like, oh, I would like some Gatorade. I'd like some electrolytes. It was
I
between
don't.
that or the body armor, but body armor is more expensive, so I went cheap.
I will say, something weird did happen to me today, and I think this kind of goes hand in hand with your birthday. Levi, you can chime in
Ooh.
with this. You've been living on your own. Well, you're not living on your own, but you are. You know, you're not at home
Mhm.
anymore, so
Yeah.
you can chime into that too. But a peculiar thing happened to me today. Like I said, we're off the cuff now. Is this about history? Heck no. Shut up, Bean. It's my hamster. So today, I got an email after work that I was invited to a Halloween party at the place that I tutor for. And what it was for was like the kids were going to be there, but it was like, hey, come hang out with the adults. Bring your own beer. We're going to watch a movie and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And I was like, this is like the first adult gathering I've ever been invited to where I'm not just a kid with my mom. And it was weird. And I don't
Really?
know. I wanted to ask you guys, like, have you, because these are people that are like, I'm talking like on Friday when I leave for the day, they let the kids play some more so they can pop out wine and drink wine on their balcony. You know, they're those type of people. They have quintessentially two houses. Like I teach in the back house and they're in the front house. So you know they're the little rich people and
Damn,
stuff
that's
like
some
that.
rich people shit right there.
And I got invited to their party, and of course I accepted because I'm like I'm not going to accept, and it sounds like a good time. Said I'll bring two people. Me and Susan will go. But I realized like this is the first time I'm going to like an adult party, and I do not mean that as in like a hey, we're gonna go drink it fucked up. Oh, yo, bro, what up party? I'm talking like hey, come over on Sunday. We're having a little party thing. I just want to know, have you guys interacted or had that situation happen to you yet? Because I'm kind of freaking out a little bit on the
I don't think
inside.
I really don't know. I don't think I've ever been to a party that was that formal in a way.
I'm not saying that it's super formal where you have to like wear a suit and all that, but
No,
it's
no,
like
I don't mean it like that, but like just kind of like that formality, I guess. You know
they sent out invitations
that's
for
that
October
subtlety.
1st, and it's October 8th. Like this is it seems like you know, you bring your own beer and stuff. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Matthew, have you? Because you were like,
Me?
yeah,
Um, I have been invited and gone out to multiple get-togethers with older people because I'm friends with lots of people in lots of different ages. Like,
Oh,
no,
yeah, I when I worked at the factory, I went and hung out, and we would watch movies, drink beers. We ate dinner.
I
That
think
we ate
I
a
think
home cooked meal. It was nice. It was just like a nice night. I haven't had like a Halloween party. I think that's a kind of a rich people thing. Not gonna lie. Like I don't
I mean like I think what he means here is like a party with like a lot of peers to say people that are older than you.
yeah, like
me.
these are. I'm talking about people that they're not. I don't consider these people friends. They're acquaintances. I work for them. Like the other people invited are the other parents that I've interacted with. Like, here's your kid. They did good today in school and things like that. And even then, the main family. It's not like I interacted with them to get a job and stuff like that. So I'm not talking about people that I work with and that I'm friends with. This is like a think of it kind of like an office party type thing, something like that. I don't know. It's just kind of weird.
No, I get what you're getting at now. It'd be like it would be like if I was invited to the like party for the managers and stuff like that from the
Yeah,
place I used to work.
exactly. That's what I'm thinking of. It's like if your managers were like, "Hey, I'm having a house party this nothing specific. That's a family thing. 4th of July, I don't know, Columbus Day party, something. Yeah, that's a good one. Like your manager's gonna be like, hey, Columbus Day party, come over to our house, bring your own beer, have blah blah blah, and like they even said like bring your kids and things like that. I'm like, I don't have kids. What is this party for? And I don't know. It made me feel very young and very small because I was like, I'm 23, but I ain't ready for stuff like this. Like this ain't my gig. Um, Me and Susan did decide though that we were gonna go and we're gonna buy like they have those really big bags of candy now for Halloween, and it's
Yeah.
like $10 for a 200 piece. So we think we're gonna spend like $40 or $50, and we want to get 1,000 pieces of candy and just load the fuck out of these kids with sugar because they're not trick or treating this year because of COVID. There's just they asked the parents to bring like a little bag of candy for each kid, and I was like, nah, they're getting full. Like I'm filling those suckers up. But yeah, I just wanted to mention it to you guys. I guess the only other thing that I could think of is political things, but you guys don't want to get into that on the
Yeah,
podcast.
no, I do not want to get into politics. We're probably going to get into politics on our next discussion. Like, it's almost impossible.
Yeah, it'd be almost
Dang.
impossible. This idea of capitalist first communist.
I'm just saying the
Better dead than
election
red.
being close,
Agreed.
it's gonna end up popping out. Probably by me. I can't keep it in anymore, guys. I can't. I've tried. You've noticed. I tell you before the pre-show on who I'm voting for, and it flip
Whoa.
flops every week.
Whoa, would you look at that? It looks like it's about time to end the podcast.
Take these freaking.
Oh my god. Oh, would you hear that, Levi? It sounds like it's definitely time to end the
I
podcast.
think it's time
I'm just
to.
playing. All right.
I
Well,
think
yeah.
it's.
With that being said, we are going to go ahead and end the podcast.
think it's
Thank you so
time.
much for listening. We hope you enjoyed. I think this was about Germany. I don't even know anymore. Next week on Sunday, after this podcast goes live on Sunday, it'll be a week after that. We will be talking about 20th century China. A lot more to go in depth there. A lot more to talk about. A lot more present day ramifications for what we're going to talk about.
China.
Today we can talk about how the way that they control their government led to COVID-19 because there are all those communist state controlled things like that. They shut entire cities down when COVID happened. Obviously it didn't work and it still got out, but we could all talk about things like that. So this definitely has a lot more modern day ramifications on how things work today, and I'm very excited to talk about that. Anyways, Levi, thank you so much for joining us. Matthew, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, thank you to our listeners out there. We appreciate you. Like I said in the beginning, you can find us on YouTube, youtube.com/thatoneandrew, and you can find us on podcast services such as iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and more. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Goodbye.
Have a beautiful time.
Bye.